Grab your coffee, kick up your feet. It is time for a Friday edition of Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, we got a ton to get you caught up, and we're going to do it. We're going to start it the way we start every single day. Caroline, let's get to 3 points. What is on your mind as your top point today?
Absolutely. Let's get it. Happy Friday. And we start today's 3 points off with a pretty heavy but very important and serious story. And we have the latest in Brian Flores' lawsuit against the NFL. And the latest is that the court ruled that it will go to court instead of going to arbitration, like Roger Goodell and the NFL was really pushing for. And I think the idea there was Roger Goodell wanted to kind of handled this behind closed doors. They didn't want to get, a court of law and a jury involved in it. And Brian Flores was really pushing for his day in court, and the court ruled Brian Flores' way, and it will be seen in court. So let's go back to a few years ago when Brian Flores, now the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, then the head coach for the Miami Dolphins, was released in 2022. And he accused the league of being racist, essentially. And then when he was going through head coaching interviews, he accused the Houston Texans, the New York Giants, and the Denver Broncos for sham Rooney Rule interviews. Of course, the Rooney Rule is a rule instituted by the National Football League that every head coaching open position and any senior football operation job, so that includes GM interviews, so on and so forth, must interview a certain number of ethnic minority candidates. So basically, Brian Flores is taking the league to court for racist practices. Now, we'll see how this will all pan out and how this will affect the league hiring processes moving forward. But I think, Fitz, the biggest thing to me that really stuck out is the fact that Roger Goodell was allowed to be an arbiter in this situation. To me, that feels like a massive just violation kind of there. There's way too much involvement from the league involved in the league processes. So we'll see where this pans out and how the court rules, but Brian Flores will get his day in court.
Second time in a week that courts have ruled that Roger Goodell shouldn't be the arbiter of their own issues. Is this stacked on top of John Gruden means more court issues for the NFL moving forward? Going to be interesting to keep an eye on. I will give you the top point on my mind, and it comes in the way of finally, after trickling down, we get the NBA schedule. It is out there for the people, and we now know who the NBA thinks we should be paying attention to. The Lakers, Warriors, Thunders, and Knicks lead all teams with 34 national TV appearances for the 2025-26 season. Now, a couple things here to remember. There are new league partners all across the NBA. So the NBA now will have games on TV 7 days a week. It's going to take a minute this year to get used to it, but certainly they're going to be trying to create landmark moments on every single broadcast channel that they have. And you see those big opening week matchups that they're giving us right out of the gates. They did a very NFL thing this time by giving us the schedule in pieces to sort of build up some of the suspense. They also told us maybe they're almost finally ready to let us actually pay attention to Oklahoma City. I think it's important to note when you talk about the games that the teams that are getting the most games, Golden State, we all know is a brand. The Knicks, we all know is a brand. The Lakers, you can't outrun them even if you wanted to. For Oklahoma City to finally be included at that level is substantial to me. In my mind, the fact that we get that many appearances means something. Also, even without Jason Tatum, and even in a Celtics season that might be a little different than we expect, still 25 national games for them. So it's a reminder that at the end of the day, it's all sales and brands. And at the end of the day, what the NBA wants is to make sure that their best brands have the opportunity to shine in the best possible way. I hope, like many of us, that if Oklahoma City continues to rise the way they have, that they'll eventually have the same level of platform year in and year out that we now see from Golden State. But this is a huge step in the right direction for a schedule that, frankly, looks really exciting across the board. All right, that brings us to our number one topic of the day. It's a Friday, and that means it's a Friday because we have preseason games galore, plenty of football that we're going to get into, and believe me, I should never say Friday again. Let's get into our favorite storylines. That's you
probably
take
for the
some shots.
best.
Sometimes you win.
Yeah,
sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose.
Throw it at the wall, see what sticks.
That's
That
fine.
one
That's
didn't.
fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
We move on.
Give us a storyline that's better than Friday.
All of them.
Oh,
But
okay.
I will start with the obvious. Like, do I have permission to take the lowest hanging fruit in the National Football
Mm.
League? The number one storyline that I am watching, and I think the number one storyline that all of America is going to be watching, the Browns quarterback situation. I mean, it has been the number one storyline in the NFL that just got that much juicier. Shador Sanders was out of practice on Wednesday and Thursday. He's been dealing with an oblique injury. And let me just say, side note, how many injuries are we going to deal with the quarterback position in Browns camp? I mean, come on. But he's dealing with an oblique injury that left him out of practice and will likely leave him out of the Browns preseason game on Saturday against the Eagles. So we will see Dylan Gabriel, the Cleveland Browns third round pick, get the nod on Saturday. So this adds an even, bigger, a wrinkle, I guess is the right word, but adds another little layer into this Cleveland Browns quarterback situation because Shador Sanders went out and balled. He dazzled against the Carolina Panthers in their first preseason game last Friday. What if Dylan Gabriel goes out there and does the exact same thing? Quarterback controversy, even though that's a term that I absolutely hate, but that's going to make this preseason that much more interesting. How do the Cleveland Browns decide to move forward? What if Dylan Gabriel struggles? What if it is clear what we see from Dylan Gabriel on Saturday that Shador Sanders should get the edge in that quarterback room? It's going to be juicy, but no matter what happens, it's going to make headlines. And Fitz, I am here for that in the month of August.
Yeah, no, look, you're right. One of our leads, I'll bet you by Tuesday of next week, is what does the depth chart look like for the Cleveland Browns at the quarterback position? It's just what all eyes are going to be on. I root for success for everybody. So just like I wanted Shador to be great, I want Dylan Gabriel to be great too. And then all of a sudden, Browns fans can try and figure out if they have two future starting quarterbacks. I will just remind everybody, as I have repeatedly, we keep saying the entire, not you, but the general population keeps saying that the entire quarterback room is hurt for the Browns. There's one guy named Joe Flacco that is going to be the week one starter that is still healthy. So Browns fans can get a little bit of a taste of it this weekend. I'll get you, speaking of quarterbacks, to what I think is a really interesting storyline. For the first time in his entire NFL career, Justin Herbert is going to take preseason snaps. And this is interesting to me because you and I have talked a lot about the fact that Rashawn Slater's injury up front creates some offensive line shuffling for the Chargers. So now you've got an offensive line that's going to be making some adjustments on the right side as they move Joe Alt to the left side. That's a lot of talk about fat guys, but it gets me to the quarterback position because let's be real. When you start talking about these offensive line combinations, even in a preseason game, I get a little nervous about my quarterback being out there if there's going to be any communication issues. The preseason is always interesting in general because you have different players with different objectives playing with different levels of speed and energy. That's just a natural ism that comes from the fact that some people are trying to play for their jobs and some people are just trying to get warmed up. Makes me a little bit nervous to think about Justin Herbert, one of the superstars of the league, and obviously the entire Charger season will go the way that Justin Herbert goes in this offense. Herbert being out there, I just have to wonder if Caroline, this is maybe one series. Like you just take one series, you let him hand the ball off a few times. Everybody feels good about it. It was cute. And then you put him back in an ice bath and bubble wrap until we actually get to meaningful football.
I have to think that's what it's going to be. I mean, it absolutely won't be 4 full quarters. I would be shocked if it's even 1 full quarter. But as we approach the preseason, or at least how coaches approach the preseason, I think they kind of have to find that delicate balance between playing football stupid and playing football scared. And I think that this approach with Justin Herbert, if you leave Justin Herbert on the bench in the preseason, even with some offensive line shuffle, you're playing football scared. You're gonna have to put Justin Herbert out there with that offensive line combination at some point. So do you want it to be week one against ones, or do you want it to be in the preseason when you might be going up against twos and threes defensively and maybe the threat of an injury feels a little bit less than it would in the regular season? Look, you can get hurt doing anything, knock on all the wood. Justin Herbert could wake up today, knock on wood, roll out of bed funky and he, tears a hamstring. Again, knock on wood. Injuries can happen at any time, at any point. I would rather see Justin Herbert kind of get his bearings about him with this new offensive line in actual game action versus saying, hey, no, let's wrap him up in a silk bassinet and hope for the best for week one. So I do understand Jim Harbaugh's approach to putting Justin Herbert out there, at least for a few snaps. Let's just say a series or two. I can't imagine it's going to be too much work. But I'll wrap it up with my final, preseason storyline that I'm going to be looking at this weekend. And it's not just Justin Herbert's debut in any preseason game, it's also Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson's debut. We didn't get to see the starters in the Bears' first preseason game. And Ben Johnson had a very long, very convoluted answer as to why that was the case that frankly I wasn't really following. I thought, hey, Caleb Williams is only in year 2 in a new system with a new head coach. He should get as many reps as possible. So we will see that this weekend. There's been some speculation about how Caleb Williams has been playing in practice and in training camp. There's been a lot of reports that say he doesn't look ready, that this offense doesn't look like it's a totally and complete finished product. So now we get to see that in a preseason game. How does Caleb Williams look in this new offense? How does it look like he's grasping this Ben Johnson offense? I'm just excited, frankly, Fitz, for his sake and for the sake of Chicago Bears fans everywhere, that Caleb Williams is going to get the opportunity to get some live game reps when it doesn't really matter. Because frankly, I'm expecting a big year from Caleb Williams from this Chicago Bears offense in Ben Johnson's first season.
This is where you and I agree in some ways and disagree in some ways, because we agree that this is a great opportunity, and we agree that by the end of the year, I think Caleb is going to be cooking. I just think that it's reasonable to expect a bit of a curve, right? It's reasonable in my mind to think that Ben Johnson, with an all-new language coming in, and go back to what we all learned about new languages from Kirk Cousins when he was struggling early in the year last year, and you saw on quarterback, he kept saying it's too much, too many movements, too many motions, and he was overwhelmed. For a guy that played in the league for a long time in that Atlanta offense, it is in part the job of a coach to translate to his quarterback, but it's also in part the job of a quarterback to be able to get that translation from his coach. There's a lot of moving parts in this offense. There's a lot to what Ben Johnson does particularly well. So I think that it's reasonable to expect some early season struggles. And I'm only saying that because I want to be consistent here. If the Bears come out in this preseason game and things just look out of whack, that's fine. If the Bears come out and they look absolutely great, that's fine. But I just want to temper expectations, Caroline, and at least acknowledge that who the Bears are the first month of the season doesn't have to define success or failure for the year or who they'll be in the month of November and December.
And that's why I'm glad that Caleb Williams is getting these preseason reps, because it is fair to expect a learning curve and a new system with a new head coach. And let's remember, Caleb Williams is only in his second year in the NFL. The sophomore slump can be a realistic thing. Look, I'm kind of expecting it for Jayden Daniels. I hope it doesn't happen. I'm hoping for the best for Jayden Daniels, but I'm saying, hey, maybe let's just temper our expectations a little bit, him going into his second year, because that's the exact same thing that we saw from CJ Stroud in his second year, offensive rookie of the year, and then they kind of took a couple of steps back. So it's fair to assume that Caleb Williams might struggle a little bit with all of the newness. But the more and more you struggle, the more and more learning opportunities that you get, and the better that you can be in the long run. So maybe get those learning opportunities and those learning curves out early when it doesn't matter. So that way, once week 1, week 4, week 6, so on and so forth comes along, you already have more of those reps under your belt and more learning opportunities to grow.
We have a lot of preseason football to break down with some previews, including what it will mean for your fantasy draft. But we got a preview this weekend. It is a massive weekend in the UFC. The great Ariel Helwani will join us next. We'll break it all down for you. We are joined now, superstar guest coming over, crossover, Yahoo teammate, all-around great human being, friend, all of those things. Ariel Helwani, host of the Ariel Helwani Show, joins us. And man, we had to pick up the bat phone. I'm always so honest with you. We've known each other for a long time, man. You know, the minute we started this show, our producer, Mike, kept screaming, oh my God, UFC 319, UFC 319, UFC 319. I think I've heard about 50 times that this is going to be the single greatest UFC fight in the history of all fights. Give me just the layman's term. Why is everybody so pumped for this fight this weekend?
Okay, well, first, before I get to that, congratulations to you both and the whole team on the new show. Very exciting. I love it. And we are watching and supporting on this side of the fence. So well done. What a time for me to come on, not just with UFC 319 coming up this Saturday from the United Center in Chicago, but also with the UFC's massive news earlier in the week, signing that gigantic deal with Paramount. So a lot going on, as always, in the world of combat sports and UFC in particular, UFC 319. So I know Mike is a hardcore fan, and a hardcore fan will tout that this is one of the best fights of all time. In reality, all hardcore fans are like, the next one's the best one. The next one's the best one. The next one's the best one, because these numbered shows are sort of like, you know, the big dogs, if you will, as far as the UFC is concerned. It's you know, they're premium live events, as WWE likes to say. And here you have a guy named Khamzat Chimaev, that's the guy with the beard on the left, going up to a guy named Dricus du Plessis, the champion of the middleweight division. Both of them are undefeated in the UFC. This is for the middleweight title. So DDP, the champ, going up against Khamzat. Look at these guys. They're absolutely shredded. And they have very, very loyal fan bases. DDP on top, the champ from South Africa. Khamzat representing both Chechnya, also the UAE, also Sweden. He spent a lot of time there. He has been a locomotive. I remember when I was doing my show with Daniel Cormier during the pandemic, he debuted in 2020 on Fight Island. He fought twice in the span of 10 days and then a third time a month and a half later in September. And I said, if Khamzat Chimaev is not UFC champion by the end of 2021, something went horribly wrong. Well, actually, a few things went horribly wrong. He is still undefeated, but he got really, really bad COVID. He retired for a minute. Then he had some visa problems. He couldn't fight in the United States, but still here he is, and on the verge of potentially realizing all the great aspirations that everyone had for him, because the guy is a freaking monster. He's a beast. DDP, on the other hand, people didn't have as many expectations for him because he's a bit of an awkward fighter, and a lot of fighters, including some that were on my show earlier this week, called him the weirdest and the worst best fighter, because he always finds a way to win. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look technical. It's not textbook, but he finds a way to win, and he continues to win. He's undefeated. So what's going to happen here? It's a big question. A lot of people are very excited to find out, like your producer, Mike.
It sounds like every season of The Bachelor, right? In the most shocking twist yet. It's like, this is the best fight yet. We brought up our fabulous producer, Mike Goldfarb. Now, he filled me in on a man named Carlos Prates. And
yes.
I don't know if I can truly wrap my mind around exactly how many cigarettes does he smoke in a day?
He's trying his best to wean off the cigarettes, but he's going about like 10 a day, up until he leaves to the arena. He's like an old school baseball manager who's smoking in the dugout. He will smoke. He said to me earlier this week, I will smoke. There he is. I will smoke. No problem. I will get a couple in before we go to the arena, because of course in the arena you can't smoke. Like, oh my gosh, what a crazy thing. He's a great fighter. People love this guy. He is coming off his first loss in the UFC. He had won 11 in a row. He's fighting a guy named Jeff Neal. And I won't say he, like the kids like to say, fraud checked. He was not fraud checked. He lost to a very good, smart fighter named Ian Machado Gary back in April. And so this is his bounce back fight. And to me, that's always very interesting. When a guy has won that many fights in a row and then loses, and it was close but not super close. He went the distance, 5 rounds in the main event in Kansas City. You always want to see how they rebound. You want to see how they respond. Do they change things? Do they are they gun shy? Are they a little more tentative? Things like that. Now, he didn't get knocked out, so I'm not expecting that, but he did say, I'll be honest, I didn't listen to my coaches. I strayed from the game plan. I was a little bit too selfish on the night. And so perhaps now he'll fight a little smarter. He's fighting a guy named Jeff Neal, who's never been stopped via strikes in the UFC, and he says he's going to be the first. So that's one of the many fights on this card that I'm really, really looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not one to yuck anybody's yum, whether that's cigarettes or not. But let's get into some of the biggest UFC news really in a long time. 7 years, $7.7 billion deal with Paramount. What was your reaction when you first heard this deal was coming to be? And who do you think won the negotiations?
Okay, well, that's a great question. So there's four entities involved here, right? The UFC's deal was coming to an end. Their domestic deal here in the United States with ESPN, end of 2025. So we all knew this was coming. At the beginning of the year, we had a prediction show for the upcoming year, and I said this was going to be the story of the year because I expected that for the first time in their history, the UFC would get a deal that would get them over $1 billion a year in terms of rights fees in America. I never suspected, and no one really ever expected, that they would get it from one entity. We all thought they would have to split it up, just like the NFL does, the NBA does, MLB, NHL, etc. Here, first shock, they get it from one entity. I expected that they would split it up maybe 2, max 3 ways, which have never done in their history, but that's the sign of the times. And I thought ESPN would 100% still be involved. I think the deal has worked out pretty well for both parties since 2019 when it started. And so I thought it would be some combination of ESPN, maybe a little Netflix, a little Amazon, a little Apple. Paramount was never really in the running, but then a few funny things happened along the way. As you guys know, there was this big settlement between CBS and the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Then this merger finally went through between Skydance and Paramount. And then all of a sudden, a couple of days later, you get this massive deal where David Ellison, the new head honcho over there, the son of Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, says, I want to own a sport. And this is one of the last sports that you can own for a very long time because everyone else is tied up with their rights fees deals for the foreseeable future. And so I was very surprised about that. I think it's a great deal for the UFC. It's the biggest deal that they've ever received. Their last deal with ESPN, by the way, was approximately $550 million a year. Now they're getting $1.1 billion a year. So they've doubled it. That's tremendous business. On the side of the fans, they win as well because pay-per-views are gone. For the first time in UFC history, there will be no more pay-per-views. All those numbers shows, like 319 this weekend, that's on pay-per-views, $79.99 if you want to watch the main card. That's done. All the shows are going to be on Paramount Plus. Currently, it's $12.99 for ad-free subscription, $7.99 for the regular subscription with ads. I suspect by the time this deal goes into play in 2026, that will all go up. But still, way cheaper than paying about $1,000 a year if you're buying every single show. So the fans win as well. I think for Paramount, it's great because, again, Ellison gets to own a sport. He locks them up for 7 years. Now you get to be the exclusive home of the UFC, and you get the option to sign them up when their deals globally come to their conclusion. The big one is the fighters. What does this all mean for the fighters? Right now, we don't know. Dana White says the bonuses are going to go up. What does that mean? Well, 4 times a night, every single show, they give out bonuses. 2 to the fight of the night participants, 2 to the best performance of the night participants. Currently, that's $50K. That's chump change for them. Dana said he's going to raise that. How much? Is it going to be $100K? That would be great. What about the base pay? Currently, the base pay for a UFC debutant is 12 and 12, meaning 12,000 to show up, 12,000 if you win your fight. That's it. Is that going to get raised? Is it going to go to 2020, 16 and 16? What about the top dogs? The champions currently, and I'm sorry for going long here, but it's a very complex thing. The champions of the UFC get something called pay-per-view points, meaning if I'm on UFC 319 and I'm Dricus du Plessis and that show sells 750,000 pay-per-views, I get a cut of that. I participate in the business. Now that there's no more pay-per-views, what happens to their points? That's the great incentive to become a champion of the UFC because only champions get pay-per-view points. So what happens? All that remains to be seen. By the way, if you're a regular sports fan, you know that NBA players, NFL players, they tend to participate around 50% of the general revenue. As far as TV deals, in the NBA, when the TV deals come through, the salary cap goes up exponentially, just as the likes of Kevin Durant. Guess what? The fighters, get 0% of this deal in terms of revenue sharing because there's no CBA, there's no collective bargaining, there's no Players Association, Fighters Association. So that remains to be seen. But overall, if you're a fan, UFC or Paramount, I'd say this is a pretty big win.
Let me just ask you then about the ESPN side of it, because I saw some of your conversation talking about some concern here. And I'm going to tell a story on mic that, frankly, I've never told in front of a microphone, but I told you years ago. When I first started at ESPN in 2017, at the time, I remember going to our bosses in radio and saying, hey, this is a big UFC event. Should we talk about it? And they laughed and they said, absolutely not. Our audience does not care. It was about 3 months later that ESPN signed their initial deal with UFC. And that's when the bosses, the same bosses that said they don't care, came to Sarah Spain and I and said, you need to start having this guy named Ariel Helwani on your show every single time there's a big pay-per-view. It's good for the publicity of the sport, and we have a deal with them now. How concerned are you that now that ESPN is not a partner with UFC, they will again decide that the sport is irrelevant and it will no longer be part of the casual consciousness?
Well, you're 100% right about that. Just ask the NHL as well, right? They're on ESPN. They're getting covered, Valerie Melrose, all that stuff. They leave ESPN. They don't talk about them. They come back to ESPN in the last couple of years, and now you've got great analysts and writers and insiders and all that stuff. So I suspect the same thing is going to happen. You use the word concern, though. I'm not concerned. In fact, it's good for us over at uncrowned.com and Yahoo Sports, because if they're not covering it, there's just a lot more for us to do. And so there's less competition. But if I'm the UFC brass, if I'm Dana White, look, he'll never say this. He wanted to stay with ESPN. The dream was always ESPN for him. He wanted that validation. He wanted to be on the ticker. He wanted to watch the NBA finals and see on the scorers table, you know, the upcoming pay-per-view being advertised. You can't buy that. We did a whole breakdown. All of ESPN's social numbers, and I'm talking Instagram, TikTok, IG, Twitter, YouTube, all of them combined, right, equals out to approximately 300 million either subs or followers, right? Because some people use subs, okay? CBS, all of them combined. So we're talking CBS Sports, Paramount Plus, whatever would fall, Paramount, whatever fall, anything. We tried to get anything under the CBS umbrella that would pertain to UFC. It's about 32 million. So 300 million to 32 million. People aren't paying attention to how much the UFC is going to be out of that sort of social consciousness. Kids, they're constantly on their phones, right? They're constantly on Instagram, TikTok. The UFC benefited greatly from those ESPN SportsCenter accounts. That doesn't appear. So now obviously you've got this huge deal and it's going to be all fine. They're not going to be bankrupt. It's going to be great, but they're going to lose out. And to your point, .com's not going to cover them as much. First Take isn't going to cover them as much. SportsCenter isn't going to cover them after the shows and all that stuff. And they're gonna not be as part of the conversation. And so, yeah, if I'm someone in the UFC, I'm thinking, how do we remain? And by the way, earlier in the week, Mark Shapiro, who's the COO and the president of TKO, which is the parent company of the UFC and WWE, was sort of like touting this thing of like, hey, pay-per-view is dead. This is great. Pay-per-view is dead, right? This is great for the fans. And Dana was the one who was like, yo, pay-per-view isn't dead yet. We still have to sell a pay-per-view this Saturday and 4 more after that. And I think part of the reason why he did that was to not end this ESPN deal on a bad note. Because if I'm someone in Bristol, our old bosses over there, and I'm hearing Mark Shapiro say pay-per-view is dead when there's 319 this Saturday and we're on the hook for that pay-per-view. I'm like, hey guys, are we ending this the wrong way? Are we trying to torpedo our numbers on the way out? So I think there's going to be an interesting dance being played over the next few months.
And look, good business practices on his part. It's a reminder to all of us that this deal has not already kicked in yet. And yes, of course, the UFC losing some of that publicity from ESPN, take it at whatever it's worth. But I always believe leagues that are growing or want to continue to grow, there are 2 very important things: investment and accessibility. And that's what this new Paramount deal gives. It's almost an $8 billion deal, and it feels more accessible that it's not behind that $80 per fight pay-per-view paywall. So how do you think this deal can make the UFC one of the biggest sports leagues in the world?
Well, already from a rights fee standpoint, they're in the conversation. Obviously, the NFL is gigantic, NBA, but they're now like top 5, top 6, and that's a huge win for them because not that long ago, they weren't even on cable. They weren't even on pay-per-view. I'm talking just like 25 or so years ago. That's not that long ago. And so that is big. Being on CBS is going to be big. So right now they have 30 fight nights, which are they're sort of like lesser tier events, and 13 pay-per-views, the numbered shows, 319, 320, etc. They're not going to be pay-per-views anymore. They're going to be PLEs, premium live events. That's what WWE calls them because they don't have pay-per-view anymore either. And so the sentiment, and again, they keep like kind of doing this awkward dance, but it seems like come 2026, those 13 premium live events are going to all be on Paramount Plus, and 4 of those are going to be on CBS, including this much talked about White House card on July 4th, 2026, which is a very real thing, and it'll be a part of USA's 250th anniversary celebration. And what a crazy thing that 10 years ago, the sport of mixed martial arts was banned in the state of New York, couldn't even do a show at MSG. 10 years later, they're going to be having a show on the White House lawn. It's just crazy to see how far things have come. And of course, a lot of that is because of the relationship between Dana White and President Trump. In any event, that's going to be huge, and they'll be a part of the consciousness, and there'll be promotion during the NFL playoffs and during the Masters and March Madness and all that stuff. But I do really wonder, if they're going to lose out. Like, I think when you are a part of the ESPN ecosystem, you are just a part of the sports conversation. And again, this is not me just poo-pooing the deal. It's a brilliant deal, and they made out like bandits, and congratulations to them. But I think a lot of people are discounting just how big it is to be a part of the worldwide leader ecosystem. And I think a lot of people are discounting how much ESPN helped the UFC. The UFC doesn't get 1.1 billion without ESPN. If they're going from Fox to 2026, Paramount isn't paying. Like, ESPN elevated them, and they benefited greatly from being the only game in town during the pandemic. And ESPN, look, I remember 2020, there's no sports going on except for the UFC. Guys, I'm on the A block of the 6 p.m. Sports Center talking about Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. That never happened. We're not talking UFC fights in the A block of the 6 p.m. Sports Center, but there was nothing else going on. And so now all of a sudden, I've got my friends and family members being like, who should I bet on this weekend? I'm so bored. I'm talking like the very early dark days, May 2020. They benefited greatly from it, and they'll be fine. But I do wonder if there'll be a bit of a ceiling as a result of leaving the worldwide leader.
All right, you love clicks. I love clicks. We love clicks. We all love clicks. Let's get some. Logan Paul threw out some accusations. You leaking some things. I know you could talk about it on your show, but I'd rather you talk about it on ours so everybody finds out about Yahoo Sports Daily. The floor is yours, my friend.
I was having such a good day, guys, and now you're going to get me all riled up again. I appreciate that. I was on Logan's show, Impulsive, and it was a great time, and I appreciate them having me. And my kids think that's cool, and my nephews think that's cool. And I have no issues with Logan or his brother Jake, and I think what they built is incredible. There were a few things that one might think could have irked me. They showed up wearing a shirt with my face on it and called me a D1 Glazer. That's fine. I could roll with the punches. In case you don't know, that's like a Division I Glazer, the highest form of glaze, which I actually take as a compliment because most people would actually quantify me as a D1 hater. So this is good. It's a positive thing, I think. He's eating during the interview. He's scrolling on his phone. All those things I could roll off my back. It's all good. But the one thing that got me fired up, and the one thing that I felt compelled to respond to, in fact, I actually thought they were going to take this out because I thought it made him look bad, but they didn't, was that I was talking about like how much journalism means to me and how much being trustworthy means to me, and how if I wasn't trustworthy, if I didn't keep my word, if I was a loose lips type of guy, reporter, I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be talking to me. I'd be doing something else. To me, if you say something to me, you meaning like a source, a fighter, a coach, a manager, it goes into a special place in my heart and in my brain. It goes into a vault that I would never open unless you want me to open it. If you tell me something, if you call me up today with information and you say, hey, this guy's fighting this guy, unless you say otherwise, to me, it's always off the record. A lot of reporters aren't this way. They'll run with it. I believe in relationships. And so when people say that I leaked this or leaked that, like, they don't understand how seriously I take this stuff. And so when I was talking about this, because we were talking about the old Brock Lesnar story from 2016, I didn't like the word leak, and I didn't like the insinuation that I did something wrong, because I didn't, because I just got the information just like any insider does. Someone who wasn't working for the UFC, I wasn't privy to any sort of insider knowledge from the company. This is the sort of story that people like to tell, and it's 1,000% not true. He then said, well, you did that to me. And I said, absolutely not. And he said, yes, when I was in talks to fight Conor McGregor, you DM'd me and asked me if it was true. And I said no. And then you went on your show and said, Logan Paul told me it's not true, and you ruined the whole thing. In fact, the opposite happened. When that story came out and Conor McGregor tweeted that he was in talks with the billion-dollar like crazy family in India, like they're one of the richest families in the world, the Ambani family, and said he's in talks to fight Logan Paul over in India, I did reach out to him, which he revealed, so now it's okay. And I asked him if it was true, and he said yes. He said, yes, it's true. And then other people said yes to me. I checked. I wouldn't go just with one source. That's like the number one rule. But I said, hey, all good. We never spoke. I know this is a big deal. I went back and watched that clip. And I wanted to see, did I screw up? Did I misremember this? No, I never even said I reached out to him. Sometimes you might say, I reached out to this guy and he didn't respond, but he really did respond. I didn't even go there. I didn't even give like an inkling of that. And in addition to that, I went on the show and said, this is true. I did the opposite of what he claimed I did, which was poo-pooing it. I didn't poo-poo it. I actually said there's credence to this. This could actually happen. And so it bothered me that he insinuated that I broke his trust. It bothered me that he got the story wrong. And it bothered me that he like just kind of like he kept doubling and tripling down on this idea that I just go and DM people and then I run with it. That's absolutely not true. I would never do that. And oh, by the way, I would never go off one source. You have to have at least two. That's rule number one at Syracuse University, the Newhouse School of Public Communications. And so the whole thing kind of irked me. And then I felt the need to respond. But like in reality, it's all good. We come from different worlds. He's a content creator. He's a YouTuber. He's an incredible professional wrestler. I'm a guy who maybe takes all of this very, very seriously, and it's my life and my reputation, and it's all I have to hang my hat on. And so when someone throws that out, I'm going to defend myself.
Totally fair and justified in doing that. And one more before we let you go, because we have taken way too much of your time.
No problem.
But Kristaps Porzingis, of course, NBA star, has said that he hopes to start an MMA career after his basketball playing days are over. Would probably be the first 7-footer in the UFC or in MMA period.
Yes.
Thoughts on Kristaps Porzingis pursuing a career in the UFC?
So first off, I love KP. I'll always love KP. I'm a huge Knicks fan. And despite the fact that, he left and it ended poorly and even went to the Celtics, I'm thrilled he's not on the Celtics anymore because I don't have the same kind of animosity towards the Hawks, even though Hawks fans want to believe Knicks fans really hate them. We don't really care about them. It's all well and good. I also know he's a hardcore MMA fan. In fact, one of the first times that I had the pleasure of running into him, we were talking about MMA and I couldn't believe just how much he knew about it. Like he is hardcore. In fact, sometimes I'll get like random messages from him being like, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. I don't think he would. It was like, during the NBA finals, during the Mavericks, he's hitting me up asking like, what's the scoop with Conor McGregor fighting Michael Chandler? I'm like, bro, you're about to fight in the NBA final. You're about to play in the NBA finals. This is crazy that you're that big of a fan. I love it. And so I believe him when he says this. And in fact, he's told me something like this as well, as far as like telling the teams that he wouldn't do it while he's playing, but then, later on in his career. Who knows how his body feels later on, but I would love to see it. Darko Milicic, if you remember him from way back in the day, he actually dabbled in a little bit of kickboxing post-NBA. So it has been done before. Darren Williams, former point guard for the New Jersey Nets, Brooklyn, obviously the Jazz as well. He had a boxing match against Frank Gore. So we've seen this. We've seen some guys transition. It's usually the NFL players that go from playing to fighting. But I would be all in, and I would wish him the absolute best. I would love to see it happen, or maybe just jiu-jitsu. I know he likes jiu-jitsu as well, so maybe that would be good. Although he has the long limbs, and that might not be great for him because it's easy to grab on. But all to say, totally in support, and would love to see it.
Check out the great Ariel Helwani show. He is Ariel Helwani, a great host, a great UFC mind, and an even better dude. Thanks for the time, man. We appreciate you hanging out with us on our first big week of the show. Look forward to having you back.
Thank you, guys. My pleasure. Anytime you want me or anyone on the team, good luck to you guys. Congratulations. Continued success to all.
Thanks to Ariel for grabbing the bat phone. Coming up next is the NFL showing favoritism to the Chiefs. We'll explain it on Yahoo Sports Daily. Jordan Addison and Rashee Rice pleaded guilty the same day. Addison will miss the first 3 games of the season. Rice will be available for 4 and likely 5 high-profile games. Source, quote, maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but this is odd. It's Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. And for full context here, Jordan Addison was found guilty of a DUI, which he's going to have a 3-game suspension for. All right, but Rashee Rice, on the other hand, was found guilty of far more at this point. Rashee had a multi-car crash in Dallas, pled guilty to 2 third-degree felony charges as part of that. But he has not yet been suspended. And Caroline, that is because they are going to do a separate hearing on September 30th. And because of that, it means he'll be available. I'm left to wonder at this point, as much as people will yell, is there some wild conspiracy theory that allows the Chiefs to get this opportunity?
That's going to be the narrative, right? And look, it's not the first time that there has been a conspiracy or a narrative that the Kansas City Chiefs get favoritism, right? We've all had that conspiracy or heard the conspiracy that the Kansas City Chiefs get all of the calls. And whether you believe that or don't, you are totally entitled to your opinion. Does this smell a little fishy? Like, yes, absolutely. Of course it does. I can't go that far, though, because I think the NFL, its number one priority is maintaining the integrity of the shield. Now, do I think that there's some shady goings on behind closed doors in the National Football League? Yes, absolutely. Of course I do. And I think that would be naive to think that there isn't. But I can't think that this is, some sort of big plan cooked up to give the Chiefs a better advantage, having Rashee Rice out on the field for the first 4 to 5 games. Because just because Rashee Rice will be available for the first 4 to 5 games does not mean that he will not get an NFL suspension. I would suspect that he is going to serve his suspension. It'll just be after the hearing on September 30th. Now, why is Rashee Rice's hearing on September 30th and Jordan Addison's was earlier? I don't know. I can't answer that question. I am more than happy to put my tinfoil hat on. I love a good conspiracy theory. If it's, that. I can't call this Chiefs favoritism, and I can't go that far into saying that this, in fact, is a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, look, me, we're the opposite on this one. I really don't care about conspiracy theories. They don't typically change my Friday. I will say this. According to multiple reports, the reason that the hearing is September 30th is that the Chiefs and the NFL couldn't agree on a suspension term. And as a result, they're going to arbitration, and the mediator that's going to hear it isn't available until September 30th. Like, people don't like normal answers. I say this all the time. You can convince a conspiracy theorist of another conspiracy theory without any evidence, and they'll immediately buy in. But if you try and walk back a conspiracy theory, nobody wants to believe that. Like, I get it. Look, I'm a Raiders fan. Everybody knows that. The Raiders helmet in my life is sitting 2 feet from me. It would be so easy to sit here and say the league favors the Chiefs. They don't. They don't have to. And the league doesn't have to risk anything because the Chiefs are, like, as we've said multiple times, printing money, right? So at some point, you just look at this and say, you know what this is? It's a little bit more complicated because of the felony, because of the length of it. Like, this is going to take a second to get to. And that's okay. At the end of the day, it's better that they get the suspension right for the full crime rather than turn around and try and get it quickly so that everybody feels better about it. This is no different than the constant officiating conspiracies people want to throw out there. I literally talked to Jack Del Rio years ago when I worked at ESPN. Jack and I were working together at ESPN. I sat back in the hallways with him one day and I said, Jack, do you believe that the refs have a bias against the Raiders? Because that's one thing people always say. And Jack laughed and said, no, you know what I do know? I know that when you're a bad team, you get the worst officiating crews by judge. So if the judged and graded officiating crews are the worst, they get the worst matchup. And if that happens to be Raiders-Jags, then you're going to get lesser officials, which means you're going to get more questionable calls because they're just not as good at their job. The Chiefs are not that. The Chiefs are at the absolute top. So what does that tell me? They get the highest judged officials. They get the highest rated everything. They are the highest rated everything not named the Dallas Cowboys. They are a ratings monster. They don't need help. They're just better than your favorite team. And it's a hell of a lot easier to look in the mirror and say, you know what? The whole thing's rigged than it is to look in the mirror and say, God, My quarterback's not as good as Patrick Mahomes. My head coach isn't as good as Andy Reid. My GM's not as good as their GM. My defensive coordinator's not as good as their defensive coordinator. And flat out, my team isn't as good as their team. We'd be a lot happier as a society if we could be honest with ourselves instead of trying to find some wild conspiracy theory that gives the Chiefs an advantage that they don't even need to kick the butts of most of the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, look, refs giveth and refs taketh away. If I had $1 for every time I bitched about the refs, and if I had $1 for every time that I said, well, man, I don't think that's the right call, but I will take it because it favors my team. It just feels like whenever we have enough of a sample size of something, it'll just confirm a bias that is already there. We all believe, or at least the general football society believes, that the Chiefs get favoritism or the Chiefs get all of the calls. So it feels like since Rashee Rice will be available for the first few games of the year and Jordan Addison won't, then it's just everything going the Chiefs' way, when in reality there's probably a whole lot of nuance there. But you said something about transparency in society. I think there is a trickle down effect to transparency in the National Football League. I know that the NFL does not want to be an open book. I know that the NFL would like to be black and white and not be gray, or in some instances they'd rather be gray rather than black and white, so there's not a blanket rule or a blanket statement over anything that happens. The league likes to have wiggle room, and the league likes to be incredibly closed and have closed doors when it comes to certain dealings like this. But I think in this specific instance, where it's a legal situation and where the facts are really out there and open to the public, I think that it would behoove the NFL to be out in the open and transparent about this and say, hey, look, does it look a little weird on paper? Yeah, it does. And we acknowledge that. But these are the situations, and this is why it is how it is, that there's no sort of, backdoor handshakes or anything that's happening, or favoritism that's happening here. This is just how things shook. I do think that transparency is the best policy for most things, not everything, but for most things. And it would behoove the NFL if they were just a little bit more transparent about some things, and this thing in particular.
Let me pull up my soapbox for a moment, if you will, my friend. And I'm going to use a Caroline Fenton-ism that I love now and I use all the time. I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum. Okay, so if you believe that the league is rigged towards the Chiefs, cool. You can believe that. If you believe that the entire NFL is scripted, cool. I'm not going to change your mind. Nothing I'm going to say over the course of the next 90 seconds is going to change your mind. I would just ask this one question. If you believe it's rigged, you believe it's fixed, you believe it's scripted, you believe it's all of these things against the team that you root for and for the Kansas City Chiefs, why do you watch? I mean, at your core, if you believe that this entire thing is just a glorified action movie and the outcome is not to be trusted, what's the point of giving it any of your energy? At that point, it's no different than WWE. And look, if you can find joy in the fact that it's scripted, as wrestling fans have, if you can find joy in the fact that, hey, I understand how this is going to go. Fast and Furious movies are very popular. The good guy wins, the bad guy loses, things blow up. It's a very predictable thing. If you enjoy that, go see it. But if you are sitting here yelling at the NFL, and you're sitting here screaming and pulling your hair out over conspiracy theories about who they're giving favoritism to in this moment and why they all want Patrick Mahomes to win, if that's what you truly believe all the way to your core, just stop watching. Everybody wants to scream about it, Caroline, and I continue to say, look, if I won't yuck your yum. If you want to believe that the entire thing's rigged, just don't watch. And if you do watch, then allow yourself the freedom to just understand that it's not rigged.
Well, I don't know if people really believe that the NFL is scripted. I'm sure there's people out there. There are, people out there that believe a whole lot of things that I don't believe in. But I think it's easier to say that the league is scripted, the league is rigged, the league hates my team, than it is to acknowledge that your team might just stink. Like, I'm a New Orleans Saints fan, okay? Like, I understand being a fan of a team that stinks, and it is not very fun to go into a season saying, well, probably going to stink this year and probably going to stink next year, and just hold on to the year that was the 2018 football season as much as you can. And I will, pray to my poster of Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara and reminisce on the good old days. Sometimes it's just easier to blame other things. The league is scripted. It's the refs than it is to look at, we haven't drafted very well the past couple of years. And hey, the cap is a total incomplete mess. And maybe Derek Carr wasn't the best quarterback to pay all that money to. And you know what? Maybe it was a bad idea to draft a 26-year-old injured rookie quarterback to be the savior of our organization. I can go through that oral history of every bad team in the National Football League. It's a lot easier to say it's the league's fault rather than your favorite team's fault.
Yeah, and look, if that's the hill you want to die on, then just stop watching the league. If you think the league's out to get your team, don't watch. If you think the league has already decided that the Chiefs are going to win, don't watch. And if you are watching,
but it's just too fun, Fitz.
You can't have it both ways.
Why would you give up this beautiful torture that is football?
Oh man, it is the ultimate reality TV show. Okay, speaking of the ultimate reality TV show, the ultimate reality TV show always needs a star that is absolutely dashingly good looking. Sam Hartman going viral. We'll tell you about it next. Yahoo Sports Daily.
Sam, would you mind saying hi to my mom, Susan? She thinks you're super hot.
Susan.
Susan.
I don't, shoot, I don't discriminate from age, but
love that.
I appreciate your support.
All right, thanks.
I mean, I respect it. I respect everything about that shooter. Shoot, and then he goes out and gives us a reaction. Sam Hartman doesn't age discriminate. That we learned today, Yahoo Sports Daily, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Let's just acknowledge, I think it was 2 years ago, I saw Sam Hartman at the Super Bowl, and I just stood there and just looked at him. I'm just going to be honest. Like, some guys walk up and you're like, yeah, you're beautiful. He is a beautiful man with a beautiful head of hair. And I don't blame Susan at all, Caroline.
I'm not even Susan, but even I'm blushing. Like, oh, getting giddy a little bit from that Sam Hartman clip. I mean, he is undeniably, I don't care, what you're into. He is undeniably a good-looking man. And Susan, good for you, sister, because she's been probably watching that clip back, barking at her phone for the last couple of days. Good for Susan. Get your lick back, sister.
Look, at the end of the day, I also like Susan sending her kid up there. That's a smart strategy. And there are certain guys that you just know. Like, you walk into a bar, you're a single guy, man about town, you walk into a bar, you're like, I'm going to go see what this bar scene is like. When you see Sam Hartman in the bar, you just leave Because you know that, like, not only Sam Hartman is so beautiful that Sam and whoever is with Sam is just, they're playing in a different league than it. Like, you can be Sam's kind of funny looking fat friend, and you're still that night going to just absolutely be a king because you're with Sam Hartman, who also, not only, not for nothing, is plays in the NFL and is dashingly good looking and has that hair. And then he's just casually spinning the football as Sam Hartman would do.
Yeah, just so nonchalant, such a, laissez-faire little football flip there. And I believe it was last fall, Sam Hartman did a modeling shoot. I believe it was with Ralph Lauren, and it went viral on social media because, like, obviously. And I had so many friends reach out to me like, "Who is this? Who is that?" And I'm like, ladies, welcome to the world of football. Welcome to the world of Sam Hartman. I do always love whenever, our football world kind of bleeds into the rest of pop culture. Obviously, we saw Taylor Swift on the New Heights podcast. That's been the best example of sports bleeding into pop culture and vice versa. Once Sam Hartman got onto the girlies' Instagram and TikTok timelines, the game was over. It was done.
Also, the not for nothing, best job in the world. Like, he's the backup quarterback in Washington, where they've got a starter that's going to be there for a long time. So all he's got to do is really learn the offense, hold the clipboard, and just go every once in a while, and, like, hair will flick back, and it will be absolutely perfect. Like, that is, when you talk about, look, yes, it'd probably be better in his mind if he was the starting quarterback somewhere. But if you're going to be the backup somewhere, being the backup in D.C., which is a great party town, behind a quarterback that's going to absolutely be epic. So you know that very little will be asked of you in that process. Like, I don't know. I feel pretty good about this for Sam Hartman moving forward.
There are two jobs that probably aren't ideal, but I do believe are the best jobs in the world. One, backup quarterback in the NFL. Just ask Chase Daniel. Two, a fired head football coach in college football. Ask Coach O. Ask Jimbo Fisher. I mean, Coach O's living pretty in a high rise in Miami and wiping his tears with his millions. Like, you get a buyout in the realm of $40-50 million just to go away and not work. Okay, fine. Where do I sign up?
I need those coaching buyouts to start to hit the college football video games. It's the only way I could ever get one. All right, preseason football is upon us. We will get you caught up on everything you need to know. Vrabel getting dirty. We'll tell you about it next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Hour number 2 is underway. Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We got a lot to get into. We got celebrity guests. This has been a huge first week for us. We appreciate all of you that have taken the time to watch and all of you that are hanging out with us chatting along, and YouTube means the world to what we are doing. We're just getting started. Let's get started with hour number 2 the way we always do. 3 points, Caroline. What is on your mind, my friend?
Absolutely. A whole lot of legal news as far as the NFL is concerned this week. But Quinshon Judkins, running back for the Cleveland Browns, it has been announced that he will not face formal charges going back to an alleged domestic assault incident back in July in South Florida. So a Broward State Attorney's Office declined to formally charge Quinshon Judkins because there was a lack of video evidence. Now, there was some evidence, but it was not beyond a reasonable doubt, and it was not enough evidence. A lot of the jury in the court said it was just hearsay. A lot of he said, she said, not enough tangible evidence to formally charge Quinshon Judkins. So Quinshon Judkins is at least off the hook legally, but he's not completely off the hook yet because Quinshon Judkins could still potentially face charges from the NFL. Now, charges is probably the wrong word. Could face disciplinary action from the National Football League. So the NFL, the league as a whole, will look at the situation and decide whether or not Quinshon Judkins, again running back for the Cleveland Browns, did violate the league's conduct policy. So TBD on that. I think my question is, well, Quinshon Judkins did get the opportunity to compete in OTAs, and he got to be out there for mandatory minicamp and rookie minicamp. He's been off the field, at least for a majority of training camp. And the Browns also drafted Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee in this most recent draft class. They also have more running backs and more veterans in that room. So how does that affect Quinshon Judkins, at least early on in the season, on the depth chart, not getting those valuable reps in practice? We shall see. We shall also see what the league says, if they will decide to place any disciplinary action on Quinshon Judkins or not. But at least what we know for now is that he is off the hook by the court of law.
Well, and Dylan Sampson, a name you and I both mentioned several times. I think we're going to be the Dylan Sampson stance of all shows on fantasy football. So we'll see
I'm cool
where
with
that ends.
I love Dylan Sampson.
Hey, Browns, send us some jerseys, Browns. We're in on the Dylan Sampson love on this show. We're going to give it to him early.
I could be an NFL
often.
Free agent. I can be bought.
No, okay.
Send a couple
I am not
jerseys. Send a couple sweatshirts.
I cannot be.
I don't know.
Okay.
You don't have to be.
Okay.
I can be.
Okay. Well, Mike Goldfarb, our producer extraordinaire, is a big Browns
in the league.
Now you're going to all 30. Okay, I'll see if the Raiders can send you some gear, and we'll just end this thing quickly. All right, I'll get you my first point of the hour, and it comes from kind of an interesting college football news and nugget here. Arch Manning has been amusingly left off of the Manning Award watch list. Now, for those of you guys that may be paying attention, the Manning Award is given to the best quarterback in college football every year, and Arch happens to have that same last name. So I think we just presumed, also considering the fact that he's basically already been anointed by everybody as the next savior of college football on the number one team in all the land, just presumed you'd see his name on the Manning Award preseason watch list. Here's the catch, though. He's only started 2 games and thrown less than 100 passes at the college football level. So they don't put him on the watch list because he hasn't played enough college football to warrant being on the watch list. Let me say that again for everybody that's blowing Texas up as the number one team in the land. He's not on the watch list because he hasn't played enough college football to warrant being on the watch list. This is my whole problem with the way we're just presuming everything's going to be perfect with Arch and everything's going to be perfect with Texas this season. Let me be clear. I would love for Arch to go out and have a historic year. I would love for Texas to get back, and it'd be a great story if Texas won the Natty. Frankly, I don't have a rooting interest. If they want to win it, that's great with me. And Manning winning the Manning Award would be remarkable. This is just yet another subtle reminder to all of us from the outside looking in that simply having the last name Manning and playing quarterback for Texas doesn't automatically anoint you. You actually, I don't know, have to do a little of it on the field. Maybe he will. Time will tell. But for at least right now, rightfully so, he can't be on the watch list because, again, he hasn't done anything yet to deserve it. I just am trying to temper expectations just a little bit, Caroline. Just the smallest temper of expectations for Arch Manning. We'll see. I still think Manning winning the Manning Award would be delightful, though.
It would be, and look, if he deserves it, he deserves it. It's not like he should be disqualified from winning the award just because his last name is Manning. But I always think these preseason watch lists, they're like 2 a.m. you up texts. They don't mean anything. Don't look too far into it. Just because you're not on the list in August doesn't mean that you are disqualified from potentially winning the award.
Yeah, that is a fact. Let's get to our number 1 point. Preseason football, the weekend is upon us, and that means we get fresh preseason games to over-speculate, overwatch, and over-yell about. And I'll give you a preseason storyline that I love. Mike Vrabel, somebody that you and I both know pretty well, somebody you and I have been around a lot covering, right there in the middle of the scrum. Just there's a little bit of a battle. Vrabel getting in it. Not the first time this season that Vrabel has put himself right in the middle of players battling in full pads. I'm starting to think I want to watch the game this weekend just to see if Vrabes suits up. At this point, I would not be surprised at all for Vrabes to get so frustrated he just takes somebody else's pads. I want this. He takes somebody else's pads off of them. He hits them. He puts the helmet on, and boom, we end up with Mike Vrabel on the field.
I mean, it's just incredible. And I think that Mike Vrabel maybe has forgotten that just because he is back in Foxborough does not mean that he is playing. Like maybe he got those wires disconnected there. Like easy Vrabel's like, you are not the one in pads. Okay, you are not the one hopping in an ice tub or a hot tub after the practice. I do love that though. I covered Mike Vrabel for several years when he was the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. And I think one thing that I learned about Mike Vrabel is that he's very much so a player's coach. Obviously, he was a player in the National Football League. He did win Super Bowls in the National Football League. And I do think that there is sometimes a wrong assumption about Mike Vrabel that he comes from the Bill Belichick coaching tree. He doesn't. Mike Vrabel never coached under Bill Belichick. He played under Bill Belichick, and sometimes I do believe that he has some very similar traits to Bill Belichick, maybe the way that he answers questions in press conferences, maybe the way that he is a little bit stubborn in the way that he approaches his football philosophy. But there's a very stark difference between Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick. Fitz, could you ever imagine Bill Belichick getting at the bottom of a dog pile in practice? Heck no. There is this kind of playfulness that I think Mike Vrabel approaches his coaching style with that is really fun to watch, especially him being back in a place that he has several times said feels like home. So I don't know what the Patriots are going to look like. They're getting a lot of love this offseason. I am tempering those expectations. I'm not diving head first into the pool of Patriots expectations. I think they're probably going to struggle a little bit, but I do love to see clips like this. But another preseason storyline that I'm watching, if we want to keep it with the Patriots theme here, is running back TreVeyon Henderson. I mean, TreVeyon Henderson, 100-yard return in their first preseason game. All reports coming out of practice say that TreVeyon Henderson might just be the most athletic and the most explosive player on the field. And look, Patriots don't have the deepest roster in the whole entire world, but that is saying a lot if he's the most explosive player on the field. He's been ripping off 60, 70-yard runs. You're seeing it right there, some of the things that he's been doing in practice at Patriots training camp. Of course, it's early. Take everything with a grain of salt. But we saw TreVeyon Henderson do those things in college when he was at Ohio State. So I'm so excited to continue to watch TreVeyon Henderson, not just in the preseason, but what he can do when it actually counts.
I will remind the world that the Patriots were a Joe Milton win away from having the first overall draft. So, yes, I agree with you. TreVeyon's going to be, I think, a star for the Patriots. And I believe that the Patriots have done a lot of really good things to help this football team. They are essentially trying to go from worst to relevant. And I think we've forgotten how bad it was at times last year. And then we're just sort of giving too much grace to how good it can be. So I'm with you. I'm excited to watch TreVeyon Henderson this weekend. I'm excited to see the Patriots this weekend. But my expectations are let's say, tempered a little bit, somewhere in the range of lukewarm on the Patriots this year. We're squarely in the patient Patriot people place. I used a lot of P's right there. All right, let me get you to one more story. I can barely speak. One more storyline that matters a lot. And look, I debated this one. I'll be honest with you, Caroline. I debated this one because I was thinking about it, and then I was hanging out last night, saw a bunch of buddies, and I don't know, 15 different people walked up to me over the course of 20 minutes, all saying, what's going to happen with Ashton Jeanty this year? Because he was bad in the first preseason game. And it occurred to me, I don't put any weight in preseason. I just don't. But fantasy football fans do. And Ashton Genty getting 3 carries for -1 yards in the first game is cause for concern. Now, reports out of their joint practices with the 49ers seem to indicate that the offensive line was playing a little bit better against San Francisco. But while I don't think there's a lot of weight in a usual preseason game, you know that I have high expectations. I believe that Ashton Genty is capable this year of putting up historic numbers in the range of what the best of Christian McCaffrey was, because he's going to get that level of volume from Chip Kelly. That being said, that line's got to play well enough for him to actually be the great player everybody thinks he can be. So I don't want to overreact. I don't want to put too much weight in preseason. But if we continue to see Ashton Genty get 4 or 5 carries for -3 yards, man, there's going to be a level of panic, not just for me, not just for Raiders fans, but specifically for everybody out here who's thinking about drafting Ashton Genty as RB1 in the upcoming fantasy drafts that they're having.
I can't put too much weight into 3 carries in a preseason game, because if you are the Seahawks defense, obviously Raiders Seahawks week 1 of the preseason, if you're the Seahawks defense, let's not forget their head coach is a defensive-minded head coach. Don't you think your number 1 game plan is going to be, let's just not let Ashton Genty run all over us? I would say probably so. But once actual games come around, once we get into the regular season, it's not just going to be, hey, let's stop Ashton Genty, because if you sell out to stop the run, well then, mama, you got a Brock Bowers waiting there for you. So I think once we see this Raiders offense, all of the ones out there, when it's actually in a game that matters, we're not going to see so much attention paid to Ashton Genty. I'm not going to say every Boise State game last year, because I didn't. And if you said you did, you're a liar, unless you're a Boise State fan. I watched enough Ashton Genty in college, and I understand that there's a massive leap from non-Power 4 conferences in college football to the NFL. I wholeheartedly understand that. But that was every team's game plan in college, was to sell out to stop Ashton Genty. And he still ran for 150 yards plus almost every single game in college. So will the numbers in the NFL be that gaudy? Probably not. But I still believe and have enough faith in Ashton Genty and who he is as an absolute monster of a player to know that he can overcome a lot more than what he has seen in a preseason game.
Sure. I just think you're right, 1,000%. I think the expectations, particularly from a fantasy football standpoint, have gotten lofty, and I'm part of that. I'm part of the problem with this. Like, I look at Ashton Genty's volume, and I continually say this guy is going to be an absolute beast. I don't worry about Ashton Genty. I do worry a little bit about the line in front of him. If he can't run, he can't run. Now, you're right. That first preseason game was super simple. It's 3 carries. What are we doing, right? So I'm not going to turn around and blow 3 carries up. It'll matter a lot more week 1, where they happen to take on the Patriots team we were just mentioning. So, that's when we'll get a real sense. But it does. I think the reason this stacks is if he turns around and has another, 1 yard per carry sort of game, now everybody's going to say, hey, especially right before fantasy drafts. We all know that the recency bias that plays into your fantasy draft mind is substantial. But I do think your point is a valid one. Look, this offense is going to get better over the course of this preseason. Also, they're not really game planning all of these things. We know it. But when you are the running back of a team that more often than not is just trash and lets their players down, I just have to wonder how much faith we can all have if we're sitting here on Monday saying, yet again, nothing out of Ashton Genty. I think fantasy football fans at that point start their panic.
I do, from a fantasy perspective, wholeheartedly understand that. From a football perspective and overall faith in Ashton Genty in a 17-game season, that's a different story. But from a fantasy perspective, have the faith. I know Fitz said he would take him number 2 overall in his fantasy draft. That might be a little bit too rich for my blood, but have the faith.
Look. I watched some of my buddies at ESPN over the weekend taking him as RB1. Look, RB1 is a safe place for Ashton Genty. I will die on that hill. Wherever you have your RB1, put Ashton Genty in that spot. If this doesn't turn out well, boy, we're going to have a celebrity chef come on and teach me how to cook crow, because I'm going to have plenty of it to eat. Speaking of things to eat, I love chili. You love chili. We all love chili. Our next guest particularly loves chili. We're gonna keep Yahoo Sports Daily going. Gonna have a little bit of fun. I don't know. Brian Baumgartner joining the show. We'll ask some office questions. We'll get some Packers love in. Gonna be some fun with Kevin from The Office. The NCAA has formally notified parties tied to the Michigan NCAA infractions case that an announcement on the findings and punishments will be publicly released on Friday, sources tell Pete Thamel and Dan Wetzel. We now expect that today at 1 p.m. Eastern, there will be a Zoom call to discuss NCAA Division I Committee infraction panel decisions regarding Michigan. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Caroline, all eyes are going to be on this. This is for the sign-stealing scandal for Michigan. We've been waiting a long time to see this. All eyes are going to be on this, and I don't know that anybody can be happy no matter what the outcome is.
I think Ohio State fans can be happy if it's the death penalty, right? That's the only thing that I can really come up with here.
Which we don't
it's not
believe
going
it will
to be
right?
that. It's not going to be that. Let me say that very loud and clear. It is not going to be that, nor should it be that. I don't expect this to be I don't expect this to be a postseason ban, and I don't expect this to be a kind of punishment that is just debilitating to the Michigan football program. Now, let me say, I do think it should be a postseason ban, because I do think what Michigan was doing, if everything, all of the evidence that we at least have publicly is true and accurate and is in fact what happened, it really does not take a rocket scientist to put all of the pieces together to know that what Connor Stallions was doing was way far and beyond above what any other, assistant coach or any other employee of a program is doing. Stealing signs is not something that's new. Okay, it's not something that's exclusive to Connor Stallions. It's actually an edge and an advantage that coaches and players have been using for years. You can watch film. You can see what the sign indicators are doing on the sidelines. And if you are smart enough to put all of those pieces together to know, hey, when they do this, that means run. When they do this, that means, roll out to the left, whatever it might be, then great. That's an advantage that you're using. But what Connor Stallions was doing was way far and beyond the realm of what is acceptable and the realm of what is, allowed in the rules by the NCAA. I do think that it should be something substantial for Michigan, not a death penalty, not something that punishes the kids in the program, because I don't think that kids should be punished for the wrongdoings of adults. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a way around this. I think there is a way that the kids and the players and the team, and I call them kids, and no, they're adults, but it feels like they're kids, that unfortunately will negatively affect the team. I think that it should be something that the NCAA proves, hey, we do not tolerate this. We do not tolerate sign stealing and cheating. And obviously we're living in a different world now that we have comms and helmets versus, signs on the sidelines. I don't think it will be Fitz, frankly, because I just don't trust the NCAA to do anything right.
So I'm torn on so much of this, because I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be a massive suspension. I think you're going to see a fine. You're going to see, Sharon Moore, the head coach, suspended for some amount of time for whatever involvement they feel like he had. That all makes sense to me. I don't think you're going to see much more than that. I struggle because you're right, and you see Andy Staples there say, as we wait on the decision, I think the question will be more suspension. Michigan offered 2 games, and now they've gone back and forth. So where is it going to land? I struggle with one of the main tenets you just said, though. We can't punish the kids. This goes all the way back to some of the greatest controversies, while this is nowhere near the same level. Some of the greatest controversies we've seen in the history of college football. And the answer is always, well, you can't punish the kids. And unfortunately, lack of institutional control, which is an NCAA rule, simply is lack of institutional control. And the kids become collateral damage in that. So whether we're talking about the tragic and horrific things that happened at Penn State, or whether we're talking about, any other cheating scandal that we've seen, Baylor, all of the different scandals we've seen that have been just horrifying. One thing that has to happen when you've lost institutional control is you have to punish. And unfortunately, that means the current kids have to be punished. Otherwise, we make laws for the worst case scenario. We make rules for the worst case scenario. If you can simply hire a coach, cheat all you want, do whatever you want, break every single rule, and then by firing that coach, avoid any actual punishment for it, then there's no decentivizing in that process for NCAA teams not to simply do that every single time. Like, if UNLV decides that this year that they simply want Dan Mullen to go out and break every rule known in the history of the NCAA, but boy, they win a championship this year, and then UNLV fires their head coach. Like, the school got away with it. So unfortunately, I'm a big believer that I think penalties have to stay with schools, and penalties should stay with coaches even if they leave. So everybody attached to it should in some way get penalized. The hard part for this for Michigan is it's sign stealing. It doesn't feel like it's that level of catastrophic, but if it's not that level of catastrophic, what are we doing? Like, you fine Michigan. How much are you going to fine Michigan that they actually give a damn about? We're in a spot where coaching buyouts are hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah, fines don't matter. So fines don't matter. Scholarships don't matter. Like, what can you do that really sends you can't do this message if that's what they want to send, other than say, hey, guess what? You don't get to be part of the playoffs this year. Like, that is a real suspension that has real weight. Anything short of that, to me, is just sort of a joke.
And scholarships used to matter, I believe. Scholarships now, if you say, okay, Michigan will have 10 fewer scholarships over the next 3 years. Well, then you can just tell those 10 kids, here, we'll give you an NIL deal in the form of a scholarship. And however you want to use that money is totally, fair and all and fine and well, however you want to use it. So now that there can be financial transactions between schools and players, taking away scholarships doesn't feel as detrimental maybe as it used to in a pre-NIL era. And I'm with you. I feel like the only thing that shows that, hey, we take this seriously, and hey, you did something wrong and you broke the rules and you have to pay for it, short of course, the death penalty, and this does not warrant that, but it is a postseason ban. And I don't think that the powers at Michigan that be, whether it be Sharon Moore now or Jim Harbaugh when he was the head coach when all of these things were happening, or at the athletic department, or any of the coaches on that staff, innocence is not an excuse. Jim Harbaugh can't say, well, I didn't know about it. Well, that's not good enough for me, because you're the head coach of this football program, and it is your responsibility to know everything that happens behind those closed doors. Now, I don't believe that innocence is actually true and accurate in this situation. You cannot tell me that Jim Harbaugh or any coach in that program didn't know what was going on. So innocence isn't good enough for me. I do wonder, though, will we hear anything in all of these things that come out of it, things that should be released at noon Eastern time, and then we'll have a Zoom call and a Zoom meeting kind of breaking down all of the intricacies and the details of this case? Will there be anything that affects other schools? I watched the Connor Stallions documentary on Netflix. Highly, highly recommend if you haven't seen it. It's fascinating. There was a lot of damning evidence in that documentary, and Connor Stallions proves his innocence, and he said, I just did this out of the love in my heart for Michigan, blah, 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 yeah. But there was a lot in that documentary that I think opened my eyes to, like, oh yeah, this guy did this. There were some Venmo transactions between Connor Stallions and other GAs and coaches from, across college football, not just in the Big Ten, but across college football. And the Venmo transaction description would say, UGA signs, UGA signals, or Clemson signals, whatever it might have been. Well, if that is true, if Connor Stallions was selling signals to other programs in college football, will we see those programs show up from this NCAA's investigation in their report? I am intrigued to see where the connection is there.
That is where...
Tough week for Venmo transactions, by the way.
Yeah, that is where one of the weirdest arguments from Michigan fans comes into play, which is everybody does this. Everybody's been doing this. Oh, okay. So I hate that we live as a society now where we fight like we're 12 years old. Everybody does it. All right. Well, if the entire highway outside my house is going 90 miles an hour and the cops pull me over, I don't get to go into traffic court and be like, well, everybody else was going 90 miles an hour, Your Honor. Like, if we decide this afternoon, if the staff of Yahoo Sports Daily decides that we're going to loot a grocery store and Caroline gets away, but I don't get to say, well, wait. Caroline was also stealing stuff from the grocery store. What are we doing? Like, you got caught. So the fact that everybody else is doing it, even if you can prove everybody else is doing it, like, that doesn't mitigate your own responsibility in doing it. Now, the difference is, to your point, if there's evidence everybody else did it, now you have that John Gruden-like situation where you're saying, why are you coming at me and not everybody else? Now, that's a very fair question if we get real information. I think it's important to punish everybody. I just want to stress that even if they find everybody else is doing it, even if they believe everybody else is doing it, even if it's assumed everybody else is doing it, if your ass got caught, then you get the punishment. And that's just, as long as we've all been alive, that's the way the world has worked.
Yeah, and look, I wholeheartedly believe that Michigan's not the only program that's ever done this. I've talked to quarterbacks and coaches that have said, yeah, we used to do that. We tried to pick up on signals watching tape and film all the time. Everyone does it. It's just an advantage. It's a competitive advantage. But Michigan took it to a complete another level. Or I should say Connor Stallions took it to a completely different level. Not all GAs are sitting on the sidelines with little Ray-Bans with cameras in them on the Central Michigan sideline in order to steal their signals. Nobody else does that, at least to my knowledge. And in the documentary that I watched on Netflix, again, highly recommend, especially with all of this news coming out, that Connor Stallions was sitting on the 50-yard line at games at Tennessee, at Georgia, at Clemson, at South Carolina, at several of these teams that were college football playoff contenders, trying to pick up on their signals. I don't know of any other GA or any other program, at least I don't know of, that does that, because Connor Stallions in Michigan got caught. I'm an LSU fan, as you can see. Will Wade wasn't the only college basketball coach giving out strong-ass offers, but he got caught.
And that's such a part of this that I'll loop all the way back to the beginning of this Michigan conversation. I really don't care who knew or who didn't know, because all of this, again, follows under one massive umbrella: lack of institutional control. And if you as a head coach don't know that your GA is stealing signals at some point, that in the way that the college football laws are written, if you don't know that your players are doing something illegal, you still pay the price for it. If you don't know that your coaches are breaking the rules, you still pay the price for it. Even if nobody knew, and Connor Stallions was a rogue agent, the fact that he was able to go rogue and nobody knew, there's still going to be punishment for that. I don't see any way walking out of that for Michigan.
I don't see any way that nobody didn't know about this. Because, like I said, he was buying tickets to some of the biggest games in all of college football. This was the 2022 season. Tennessee was the number one team in the country. Alabama came in. They had the number one offense. Tennessee had the number one offense in the country. Connor Stallions was sitting on the 50-yard line in the lower bowl. You know how much those tickets were going for? Thousands of dollars. How much does the average GA in college football make? I don't know, 40 grand. 50 grand,
Yeah.
Certainly not enough to afford the price that it would be to sit on the 50-yard line in the lower bowl in some of the most marquee matchups in college football. So I don't think that this was just good old Joe Schmo who was just trying to help out the Michigan football program. I think he was getting a little pretty penny to be doing what he was doing, and that's not allowed. And when you break the rules, you got to pay for it.
Somebody has to pay for spilled chili. All right. Now coming up next, Brian Baumgartner going to join us. We will get thoughts on everything from chili to The Office to the Packers coming up next with Kevin. We are joined now by actor, director, podcast host, just general celebrity extraordinaire. Brian Baumgartner joins us on behalf of Sam Adams, Oktoberfest Fantasy Football. A lot we're going to get into there, Brian. We're excited. Thanks for hanging out with us on Yahoo Sports Daily. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let's start with a little bit of fantasy football because Yahoo obviously plays a lot of fantasy football. You've been in a league for 20 years with your office buddies. Like, what is that moment? What's it mean for you to still have that connective tissue with everybody around fantasy football?
Well, first off, thank you for having me here. Secondly, just know this. It only means that I'm old, that I've been doing it 20 years. It literally, that's all it means. It's crazy to think that we've been doing it that long. When we started, we had legal pad that we would write all of our draft as we were working on at Dunder Mifflin. It would take like a week because if somebody wasn't there or somebody was filming, there wasn't like a minute and a half to draft. It would take like sometimes hours for somebody to draft. So it's really cool. I will share with you. I just last night. So the work now can begin. I just got the draft order for the Office Fantasy Football Draft that, which by the way, our league does use Yahoo. I'm second. I have the second pick. So any advice now I can start trying to get some advice.
Well, that's what we are here for. We got very smart fantasy football insiders that'll help you with that one. It's a lot of pressure, number 2 overall pick. But be still my Office fan heart that there is still such a strong relationship between the cast. And we've got so many great characters that came out from The Office. We had Prison Mike. We had Stanley on Pretzel Day. Subtle Sexuality, my personal favorite. But I have to ask you, what was your favorite Office character or Office moment from the show?
You want me to answer who my favorite character is? Then the only answer I can give you is Kevin Malone. I can't choose anyone else. Look, there some of the behind the scenes moments that I remember. Actually, we went from drafting the Fantasy Football League on a legal pad to we used the computers a couple of years on set. So we would come in after hour, actually maybe bring some Sam Adams Oktoberfest and bring into Dunder Mifflin. And we did our drafts live, like at all of the computers, which were active on the set. Once we were, once it went to, being online. Favorite moments, I always go to Stress Relief, which was the fake fire drill episode, which coincidentally aired immediately after the Super Bowl that year, that episode. So that moment came right after the Super Bowl, which was was the first Super Bowl I actually ever attended, which is pretty cool, special for me.
Is it for you guys to still be so connected together? It just seems rare and special, especially in Hollywood when everybody goes in a different direction. So who's the biggest trash talker in the fantasy football group now?
Oh, geez. I would say that Rain Wilson and myself, definitely draft time. If you choose wrong, you're going to hear it, and you're going to hear it pretty loudly from the two of us. It stays pretty constant throughout. It stays pretty constant throughout the season. Like I said, I think it was our first group text of the year was last night when we everybody found out their draft positions, and so we got going a little bit, and we've got the draft coming up in, I don't know, 10 days or ish. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, we're always in touch throughout the season, either who you're playing or, depending on how the season's going, if you're stinking it up. I will say that I haven't mentioned this to anybody recently, but I have the distinction of making our Super Bowl the most over the 19 years. I have never won. not once.
Oh, you're the
I have
Buffalo Bills.
never won. I am the Buffalo Bills.
For a
of the
Chiefs fan to
Office
be the
Fantasy
Buffalo
Football-
Bills is just weird
for
to
the,
me. I
for
don't know
the
how I feel
Fantasy
about it.
Football League. No, not Chiefs for me. That's like everybody else. Everybody else who's sort of funny in Hollywood is a Chiefs fan. I'm more a Packers guy myself.
Exciting season for the Packers upcoming. And speaking of your, iconic moments or any iconic moment in The Office, I think the most iconic moment, not just for your character, but maybe for the show of all time, is of course Chili Day. It's the chili scene where Kevin drops the entire vat of chili on the floor. I mean, walk me through that specific moment. Like, was everybody in the room just laughing their butts off during this? Like, did you schedule this? Like, did you plan how this was going to go? Walk me through this iconic Kevin moment.
Well, all the other. I mean, it's one of the rare moments on the show that a character was alone. Actually, so all my castmates were home, snuggled up in their beds, or I think it was a Friday night, so they got an early weekend. No, I mean the big thing was, we did a lot of rehearsing, obviously not the spilling, and that was sort of the crucial moment, was making the moment of actually spilling it as believable as possible. And there was a lot of concern about the mess. That carpet that you see there that the chili goes on is actually carpet that was overlaid. The actual carpet, they had 3 gigantic pieces of carpet, and I was told we were only going to get 3 takes at it. Yeah, so from the door all the way to Dwight and Jim's desk, around, because they didn't know exactly how far that it would spill. So I only had 3 takes at it, and thankfully for me, we got it in one. So it's at least makes it fun to say now that I got that we're still talking about in one take.
All right. Well, in honor of the spilled chili, we thought we'd have a little bit of fun. Spill it or chill it. We'll give you the chance to spill the beans on something or just stay away from it completely. So let's go to one of the best Office conspiracy theories, that maybe Pam is actually the villain in the whole show. Like, are we spilling or chilling that Pam is actually a villain?
I'm confused about which way is what, but I don't think that Pam is a villain. I think in a lot of ways, actually, the journey of the show, more than Michael, certainly more than Dwight, and more than Jim, sort of follows her journey. So you can add a new conspiracy theory or some thought in, but the show sort of begins and ends with her sort of full and total transformation. So there you go. I'll add a new wrinkle.
I love that. And I love Pam's transformation. She started as, kind of quiet, not sure of herself. She finishes it with the love of her life. She has a larger than life personality. I prefer that Pam character arc rather than Pam is the enemy. But spill or chill.
And I'll say one other thing. This is for sure that she delivers the last line of the show, which is the line which is what the show is all about, which is there's beauty in ordinary things. Isn't that kind of the point? So
it is sweet. Go. And it's such a perfect bow on that entire journey that was that show. Are you willing to spill in our game of spillin' or chillin'? Are you willing to spill the moment in filming that made you break character laughing more than any other moment?
So I will spill it. I will say, for me personally, a small moment for me personally there was a scene between Kevin and the character Holly, played by Amy Ryan, at the vending machine where she's helping Kevin pick out something there. And there was something about her face and her telling me that I had a button in my hand instead of change that made me I just couldn't hold on to it. The other moment that a lot of people talk about being the hardest one to not laugh, I was a part of and certainly laughed a lot during, was when Kevin, I almost said me, when Kevin sits on Michael's lap as Santa Claus. That was that was a tough one. That was a tough
who-
one. And that was all Steve.
Who broke the most when you guys were filming?
Mindy Kaling.
Really?
Yeah. There's yeah.
Which is funny because she's probably the one writing it.
Yeah, I know. Well, she was delighted by her jokes, and also, the performances that were happening were pretty good. But yeah, I would say Mindy.
As someone else who also tends to laugh at their own jokes that aren't nearly as funny as Mindy Kaling's, I feel like I can relate there. Spillin' or chillin', we will gonna play into your Packers fandom. For you as a Packers fan, are you willing to spill or chill on Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre? Who you taking if you had to build your team around?
Rodgers.
Ooh, I like
Rodgers.
it.
Okay. Where does Jordan Love rank in all of this then?
He wasn't a part of the question, thankfully, and I'll chill on that one.
Oh, that's right. How do you feel about the Packers coming into this season?
I don't usually offer my insights based on fandom, but I think the Bears are still going to be the Bears. They are the Bears, and they will continue to be the Bears. So I'll leave it at that. I think the Lions slip a little bit this year. Really brutal schedule, and I think they may return a little bit more back to earth. I'm not spilling or whatever the Lions being in the Super Bowl this year. And look, the Vikings, I think, are going to be good. They're so incredibly well coached, but they're starting a rookie quarterback. And so, look, I feel really good about the Packers' chances this year.
You have indulged us to be fans of your work throughout the course of this entire interview. You mentioned, your love of football. What's been the moment for you as a fan where you've looked around and said, man, I can't believe my platform has allowed me to do this?
Oh, geez. Well, for me, I guess it's what I've been able to do and the people I've been able to meet and the relationships I've been able to make through golf, really. And this, I don't know, it always feels weird to call it this, but like this celebrity golf circuit, specifically the American Century Championship in Lake Tahoe. Played in Michael Jordan's event for a number of years, Derek Jeter's event for a number of years, the Hilton Grand Vacations event in Orlando, where, I'm seeing these guys and gals, 4-5 times a year and begin to have relationship with them. And, I joked at one point, there were two things. One, I'm from Atlanta, and I have literally now played golf in a singular round with John Smoltz and Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine. So for me, growing up, like little boy Brian, like that's insane. And at the same time, there was a period of time that I don't know, I don't count, but let's say at least 2/3 of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL, I had their phone numbers, which is just great. That's not a flex. It's just like, so you asked the question, like for me, that's insane because I am a huge sports fan. I love it. And so the opportunity for me to be able to play and compete in a different game with those guys is awesome. So there you go.
If you're not doing things as an adult that little kid you would think that's the coolest thing ever and you're the coolest person ever, then like, what are we even doing? Last one before we go. You're here on behalf of Sam Adams. I will literally chug a Samuel Adams Oktoberfest right here, right now on camera with you. If you can get the one Michael Scott, Steve Carell on FaceTime. We spilling or chilling that?
I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna chill on that. But I would love
fair.
I would love
Shot
to
my
see
shot
you.
there.
Yeah, there you go. Well, good try.
I didn't know that Caroline ever chugged a beer that wasn't at an LSU game. So, look, you saved us all there. That's fair.
Oh, now I understand, actually. Now I'm from Georgia. Now I understand.
I've created rivalry.
That's everything you need to know about me.
I'm just here mixing things up. So you're with us, obviously, Sam Adams Oktoberfest. You've mentioned it, but tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing with Sam Adams with Oktoberfest and with fantasy football.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the fall. As I said, I have the draft order for fantasy football. I'm going to start doing my work as soon as I'm done with you guys on who I'm going to take number 2. And so fantasy football is back, and so is the legendary Sam Adams Oktoberfest beer. So I recommend, if of course you're of legal drinking age, that during the draft you start on the Oktoberfest, and then who knows, maybe you have some with the chili that you put together and make for the draft party. I'm sure all of you are hosting. But yeah, it's sort of an ode to the commissioners of the league. They work so hard. I mean, look, again, I got the draft order last night, of course, done by our commissioner. It is such a thankless job that we all need. I mean, who else gets yelled at for just asking people to follow the rules and pay their dues and show up to the draft on time and do like regular responsible adult things? So here's to the commissioners. We put together a commissioner's kit, and I do have to show this because I think it is unbelievable for the commissioner.
Wow.
And it says the commissioner right there. If I could figure out camera angles, I've only been doing this 20 years. The commissioner, Sam Adams vest. We've got a coin to help settle disputes, koozie stuff, and of course, because I'm still a child, we have a gavel. Because I mean, every commissioner's got a rule, one way or the other.
Because who wouldn't want a gavel?
My commissioner does not deserve any of those things. All they do now that I host fantasy football shows for Yahoo, all I get is grief when my team doesn't win from the commissioner. I deserve the best. He does. Brian, we appreciate your time, brother. Thank you. So good luck this year. If you need any tips, pointers, come back on the show often. We will we'll help you out any way we can.
Who do I pick second? Who do I pick second?
I mean, you're going to take one of the receivers, right? You're either going to take Jamar or Justin.
Jamar Chase.
Half point PPR. Half point. Does that matter?
Yeah, it does a little bit, but I'm still taking one of the. Though if picking second, I'm taking one of those two. There's no. Although they're already giving me grief in the thread because I'm a Raiders fan that's been telling everybody to draft Ashton Genty high. I will stand by this. Ashton Genty is going to be as productive as the best season Christian McCaffrey has ever had. I stand by that. But also Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
You're a Raiders guy. What if you had? I'm asking this question poorly, but you understand. Tight end Bowers ranks where?
Top of the tight ends, and frankly, he ranks. Not only is he the one tight end, he's above a large portion of the wide receivers. Overdraft Brock Bowers. Yeah, his target share is going to be through the roof. So he's a
go dogs
1,000,
go dogs.
Yeah. Brock Bowers. See, look at us.
And bald Brock Bowers, he just shaved his head, so that has to count for something, right? Like once you are a bald tight end, you automatically are just going to become, better.
He was already mostly there. Brian, we appreciate you hanging out.
Now he committed to it, Fitz. He committed to it.
Sure. We'll give him credit for it. Thank you for the time, my friend.
All right. Thank you.
We have breaking news. The Michigan punishments seem to be coming in. We'll update you on it next on Yahoo Sports Daily. The Michigan news is coming in fast and furious. Ross Dellinger tweeting, in its sign-stealing decision, the NCAA Infractions Committee is sanctioning former Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh with the show cause of 10 years and Connor Stalions with the show cause of 8 years, sources tell Yahoo Sports. Wow. It's Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Okay, this is just the beginning of the tip of the iceberg on a lot of information I'm going to give to you right now. According to multiple reports, it looks like the fine to Michigan is going to be at least $20 million from future postseason revenue. It looks like there is a 3-game suspension coming for Sherrone Moore in total. 2 games had already been offered up as a self-imposed ban by Michigan, and then the NCAA is adding 1 additional game to that. So we know weeks 3 and 4 this year, Central Michigan and Nebraska, Moore will not be on the sideline. That had already been offered up by Michigan as self-imposed punishment. They're also going to add 1 game in 2026. So Caroline, $20 million, show cause and Connor Stallion, that's all other stuff. This is just for the university's portion in all of this role. $20 million, 3-game suspension for their coach.
You showed them. Wow, good job, NCAA. I think that proves to the rest of college football that they really take these things seriously. No, I'm kidding. $20 million is a drop in the bucket. It sounds like a lot of money to you and to me, but to Michigan, that's less than 2 years of what they are paying their dynamo freshman quarterback, Bryce Underwood, who's making $12 million a year. $20 million is nothing. I mean, Michigan has some of the richest alumni and boosters and donors to collectives than any other school in all of college sports and all of college football. Sherrone Moore, 2 of those 3 games that he'll be suspended for are something that Michigan already self-imposed. Michigan said, hey, we'll sit Sherrone Moore on the sidelines for weeks 3 and 4, which is really smart and calculated by Michigan to say, hey, sorry, we did it. But they're willing to sit Sherrone Moore on the sidelines for the Central Michigan and Nebraska game. Now, look, the Nebraska game is no easy out. But they conveniently said, we will put Sherrone Moore on suspension after Michigan goes to Norman, Oklahoma to play the Sooners. So the NCAA, really all they're doing is saying Sherrone Moore is suspended for 1 game in 2026, so next year, and a $20 million fine. This, to me, Fitz, does not prove that the NCAA views what Connor Stalions did, or at least what Sherrone Moore did in relation to the Connor Stalions, sign stealing of it all with any level of seriousness. Now, the Connor Stalions and Jim Harbaugh of it. Jim Harbaugh has been placed with a 10-year show cause by the NCAA. Connor Stalions, 8 years. My question is, because Jim Harbaugh has another job. He's good. He's in the NFL. Which I think is damning evidence enough. What does the NFL do with Jim Harbaugh? Nothing? Do they feel the need to step in and have some sort of suspension or disciplinary action of their own?
This will be hairy because all the way back in 2011, when Jim Tressel went to work for the Colts, they delayed his hiring because of the controversy that he had left Ohio State under. And at the time, Roger Goodell said in interviews that had that not happened, they would have suspended Jim Tressel. So I think there is a moment here where, frankly, when you see a 10-year show cause for Harbaugh, it can appear like he's basically left that behind to go to the NFL so he doesn't have to pay his punishment. Something that Roger Goodell was adamantly opposed to in 2011. Where does he stand on it now? And this also, by the way, more breaking news comes in. Ross tweeting out that the NCAA has hit former Michigan staff member Denard Robinson with a 3-year show cause order. So they're hitting everybody involved with this, all the coaches, from a standpoint that, is damning for each of the people involved. For Harbaugh, for Denard Robinson, for Connor Stalions. For any of them, if they choose to continue a career in college football, that just got much tougher. But Caroline, go all the way back to your original point. If I told every fan base in college football, if I tell Texas right now, guess what? You can go out and you can get you a national championship by whatever means you need to. Go get you the natty. Now, it's going to cost you $20 million on the back end, and whoever your next coach is will have to face a 3-game suspension.
Okay.
They're taking that deal 10 times out of 10. Every single one of them.
Okay. I think even if you bump that up to $200 million, there'll be some schools across the country that are saying, okay, fine, sign me up. Because that is worth every single penny. So I don't trust the NCAA really to get anything right. So I shouldn't have trusted the NCAA to get this right. But quickly before we got to get out of here, Fitz, do you think that the NCAA got this right?
No, I think all the NCAA did here is remind us all that the new money of college football makes it so hard to actually punish anybody. Look, it might as well have just come out and said, hey, we realize they did it. We realize it stinked. But at the end of the day, we can't do anything about it.
And which is unfortunate. And look, it does feel right now that a postseason ban is really the only thing that you can do. But the NCAA did give Denard Robinson a 3-year show cause. Just to, a reminder to everybody out there listening, a show cause means that they cannot coach or be associated with the NCAA or a respective college in any sort of way. So Connor Stallions will not be able to work in college football for 8 years. Jim Harbaugh, 10, Denard Robinson, 3. So
yeah, this is the latest, greatest, and
underwhelming.
It's going to keep coming throughout the day. It's underwhelming to us. Stick with Yahoo Sports all day to see what our great college football experts think. I can promise you we'll continue to break it down across Yahoo Sports. Thank you so much for hanging out with Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We'll see you Monday.